They help hundreds of people in the Windham area facing homelessness. And with a new name comes even more services. We talk with Project Hope, formerly the Windham No Freeze Project. Plus, we take a look at other stories making the headlines from around the region. This is Connecticut East This Week. Hello, I'm Brian Scott-Smith. Homelessness is a big problem here in Connecticut and around the nation. And for many, it may be just a temporary thing, but for others, it can be longer term. The recent COVID pandemic has added to the problem and the state's lack of affordable housing too. But there are services and resources out there in the form of non-profits who every day provide shelter and assistance to those who are unhoused. In the town of Willimantic, the No Freeze Project has for years been a lifeline to those at risk. And now that organisation is doing even more for those in the community that need them most. We are talking to Avery Lenhart, Executive Director of Project Hope, and we're going to explain that because formerly Windham Region No Freeze Project Inc. Avery, it's great to have you back. We haven't spoken to you for a while. Sorry about that. Big things have happened since then. Before we get into all of that, just remind people about the history of Windham Region No Freeze Project, which has now transitioned to Project Hope.
Oh, thank you for having me. So Windham Region No Freeze Project was founded in 2003 by a group of concerned citizens who just were very upset that I believe someone had died in the cold. And so they started using borrowed and rented spaces to provide a place for people who are outside at night and cold to come in and sleep, stay warm, be safe. And over time, that has evolved, and we've been in lots of different places. And as we grew and got our nonprofit status and were able to accept donations and things like that, we started realizing that there's actually a real need in this community for people who are experiencing homelessness to have a safe place to go, but also to get connected to services and resources that would help them resolve their homelessness. So over time, we were really pressured a lot by the town to find a permanent location in a zone that they wanted us to be in. And that became our goal. And we were really excited to do that when we found a building available to us on 433 Valley Street, and then the building next door at 459 Valley Street. We purchased those, but we also were gifted the building at 433 Valley Street by the David Foster Family Foundation, and that was just amazing for us. It's such a wonderful thing. So in the past 3 years, we've had tremendous growth, expanded our programs, and we are currently under construction because we've received a grant from the State Department of Housing for renovations to the two buildings at that property.
What drives you and the team every day, obviously, to make this happen? Because it's hard work. Let's just be absolutely real for a second. Human and social services is a tough gig. It is thankless, but it is absolutely necessary. Always scratching around for money because it's never, ever funded properly enough. It doesn't matter where you go. They never fund this stuff properly. Yet, of course, people need help and assistance.
So for me, it's two factors. One is I just can't describe what a thrill it is when we are able to help somebody really resolve their homelessness. And they come to us, and people come to us with this feeling like they've just lost everything. And they have. In some cases, they've lost everything: their family, their home, their job, their car, whatever it is, their children. And this is the lowest point in their lives. And if we can be the people who give them one step forward into safe, stable housing, this is what we want to do. And so we're excited whenever somebody gets housed, and we just are so thrilled for them. And people come back. I now have on my staff people who were once in the shelter. And that's just amazing to me. That's just a wonderful thing to be able to give someone employment so that they can maintain their housing and their stability. So there's that. But the other thing that really drives me here is the community response. And we have people that come out of the woodwork to help us. And that just, to me, is also something that really keeps us going, knowing that we're doing this work because people want us to, because people want to help each other in this community. And it's an amazing thing. We have people who donate $10 a month. And that just warms my heart every day because these are people who maybe can't give more. But the fact that they send us money tells me that they really want to give. And that's just amazing to me. So I love the community response. I can put something on Facebook and say, hey, we need this thing. And somebody will respond in an hour. And it's just terrific. That, to me, is a huge part of what we do.
Every little helps, doesn't it? At the end of the day, like you said, it doesn't matter if it's $10 or whatever. It's cumulative, and it's just knowing that those people out there actually care. The other thing I think we really should make clear is it can happen to any of us. I think people have this really wrong idea about unhoused people that we could all fall very easily, and that's an important thing I think that we need to make very clear is that people don't deliberately set themselves out to end up homeless. It's a combination of things, isn't it, that happen around their lives. And thankfully, there are organisations like Project Hope who are there to catch them.
Right. I agree. And I think right now we're all living in this climate where many people are just one paycheck away from being homeless. And it could be one small disaster. It could be one large medical bill. It could be a car accident or a car repair. There are so many reasons now that people become homeless. I give a workshop on homelessness and what causes it. I often give it to youth groups and things like that because people do have this idea that people who are homeless are addicted or have serious mental health. And sometimes that's the case, but that's not always the case. And one of the things that I've learned in giving this workshop is one of the primary reasons that people become homeless is because of a lack of positive relationships in their lives. And we all know somebody, for instance, who's been addicted but never became homeless, or who has a mental health issue but never became homeless. So it's not just that one reason. It's the fact that we need to have more positive relationships in our lives. We also need to be positive relationships in other people's lives. And that's a really important message, I think.
Let's talk about the construction and the amazing job that is going on at the new facility. I think you said it was Valley Street.
Yeah, 433 Valley Street is under construction right now. It's a total gut renovation. So if you happen to drive by there, you'll see it looks like a three-wall shell of bricks. There's no windows, there's no door, there's nothing. And they've dug out the back of the building because they're adding on a 2,200 square foot community space that will be 2 levels. And that will be a place where people can be during the day. We're going to have a nice patio, one on either side of the building. And what the shelter will be, which is really interesting, is a kind of new model, is going to be 10 double occupancy rooms. So this will be a reduction in the number of regular beds we have. We have 28 beds now. We will be reduced to 20 beds. However, we'll have space for overflow. But the rooms will each have their own bathroom and shower, and they'll be tiny and pretty cramped. But at the same time, people will have a place where they can go, shut the door, have some privacy, have some dignity. And I'm really excited about this because when people are homeless, a lot of times they don't want to come into the shelter because they're terrified. There's a lot of people in there that they don't know. People are just sleeping in a room. What is this? This is scary. And I think in particular for women, I think that this is a big deal. And so if we can offer a space where somebody can actually close the door and know that they are safe behind that door, then that's huge. That's a huge thing.
When do you hope for the work to be finished? Obviously, everything takes time. Weather sometimes has a bit of a toll on things. Give us a bit of a sense of, hopefully, the timeline that you are looking at.
So the plan right now is that the main building at 433 Valley Street will be finished in May or June, and we'll move. The shelter is currently in the small building next door at 459. So that we'll move the shelter in there into the big building as soon as it's done. Although we are planning to have a day before we move in where the public can come and visit and see it and walk around and see, because it's going to be beautiful. And I want to make sure that it's a space that people know what it looks like inside. And that's a big thing. So we'll have a big event. We'll let everybody know. But yes, May or June is when that will be done. And then they will do a renovation of the smaller building, and that will become our administrative offices and a place for day services. So there will be some clinical services in there. There will be a resource room where our guests can come and use computers, and there will be volunteer guides if people need help with technology to do things like apply for jobs or search for apartments or fix their problem with their food stamps or whatever it is. So that's another wonderful thing that's going to happen with this.
I think what's great about that is, again, inviting the public, the community in to see this facility once it's finished, because, again, I think that just helps to destigmatize and educate people, because, again, a lot of these things that we talk about, whether it's social services or whatever, it's a lack of awareness, a lack of education, and a lack of understanding about what these things are, what they do, how they do them, isn't it?
It's true, and I think a lot of people worry and are sometimes frightened of people experiencing homelessness. And it's true that sometimes people experiencing homelessness engage in risky behavior, but they're not dangerous. And I used to think that way before I came to volunteer at the shelter. That's how I started many years ago. And I used to think, should I be frightened of any of this? And then I learned so quickly that the people that we're talking about are people just like you and me. You see somebody in the store, you see somebody in the grocery store or whatever, and you're not afraid of them, right? I will tell you that, and I can't give a number, but I will tell you that some of our folks now at the shelter actually have full-time jobs. And this is another thing, is housing has been hard to come by. Even with a full-time job, they may not be able to find an affordable place to live.
So let's fast forward, as we said, formerly known as Windham No Freeze Project, Inc. for many years, doing incredible work. It has now transitioned, not only name-wise, but also services as well, to Project Hope. What does HOPE stand for? Because it's actually an acronym for the expanded services, I understand, that you are and will be providing.
Right. So HOPE stands for Housing, Outreach, Prevention, and Emergency Shelter. And I actually really love the order of that, because I want emergency shelter to be kind of the last thing that we do. It's a last resort for people. If we can prevent somebody's homelessness, that to me comes first. If we can do something to help somebody who's unstably housed, but before they become homeless, that's huge. We also do outreach now. In the past 2 years, we've expanded our service to include outreach. We have a guy, George, who goes out and he's at the tent sites. He's helping people be safe, make sure that they have what they need. And if they are choosing not to come into shelter, that's fine. He can get them connected to services, including housing services. So he has actually housed people directly from tents. And that's huge, because now they're not even going to need to come into shelter, but they're still connected, and that's a big deal. He provides transportation for people and gets them connected to whatever services that they need, but they're also a presence in the homeless response system, and it's because of George or any outreach worker who is working with them. We also have a housing locator now. Our housing locator is named Annalise, and she works with the landlords. And she and I have gone and discussed our programs with landlords to talk to them, to alleviate their fears, and to help find appropriate housing for appropriate people. So sometimes we're trying to match people up because maybe they can't afford an apartment on their own, but they can afford a shared situation. And we work with the landlords. So the other thing is that way the landlords have somebody they can call. If there is a problem, if there is a question, if somebody does start to slip or fall behind on their rent, they can call us and we can help resolve that issue. And then that way it's not necessarily some landlord that's having a big problem that he can't solve on his own. We also have case management now. And we are also a year-round, full-day shelter. That prompted the name change. Our case manager is somebody who meets with everybody who's in the shelter, and her name is Lulu, and she makes sure that they have what they need, the resources they need. If they need an ID, a birth certificate, a social security card, if they need help finding a job or getting connected to employment services, educational services, transportation services, mental or physical health services, she works with them on that. But everything we do is with this goal of getting people housed. And that is the number one way to solve homelessness. A lot of people would say, let's have them go to another town. But that's not resolving anybody's homeless situation. The way to do it is to get them housed. And so we work with them on that.
This really is a huge expansion, as you say, on the services previously supplied by your organisation, and also just, as you say, the biggest thing, just having a year-round facility for people as well. Because we think about the cold, and as we do this interview towards the end of January, it's winter, it's cold, people obviously need these services, but at different parts of the year, people also still need shelter. It is a year-round thing. Doing all of this expansion, how excited were you all to be able to start and move in an even bigger direction with not only the change in the name, but just being able to supply all of these extra services?
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think I came on board as the executive director in 2019, and the board immediately, we created a strategic plan. And when we started talking about our vision and our goals for the future, I said, it's so heartbreaking to send people out to campsites, handing people a tent on April 30th of every year. And my staff doesn't like it, and I don't like it, and nobody likes it. And once they're outside, it's harder to talk with them, meet with them, get them connected, or keep them connected. So that's been our goal for a while, and I was looking for an opportunity to contract with the State Department of Housing. And knowing that while we had a really great support network from our community, we were getting grants and still are wonderful donations from members of the community, which are still very much needed. We needed a push from Department of Housing, just a boost. And they contracted with us last year. And in April of last year, we became a full-day, year-round shelter. They provide us about 30% of our budget, of our operating budget, and that's just the boost that we needed to be able to expand our services to year-round. And it's just been wonderful because, like I said, we have a captive audience now. When we have people in the shelter with us all the time, we can work with them on a daily basis instead of having to go find them. And this is so much easier and so much nicer.
For this particular region, are you the only one that's actually really supplying all of this wraparound service?
No. Access Agency does quite a bit. Access Agency has a shelter in Danielson, and they also have case management services and very similar services that we do. And the Holy Family Shelter is doing the same thing for families who are experiencing homelessness. Our shelter does not take any minors, so we only work with adults. We work within the CAN, and the CAN is the Coordinated Access Network. Our region is the Eastern CAN, which is all of Eastern Connecticut. So we coordinate services with other shelters, New London shelters, Danielson shelters, obviously, and then other services. Outreach services are provided by us, Access, and Reliance Health in Norwich, and St. Vincent de Paul Place, the soup kitchen in Norwich. So we work very closely with them, and that's terrific because this way we're not duplicating services for people, but we're also really have an expanded effort to reach everybody who needs help.
We're always reading in the media that homelessness seems to be on the rise again. How big an issue is it?
Right now it's big. Homelessness is on the rise, steep rise. A lot of this is fallout from COVID. And lack of affordable housing has been a big issue. We're seeing a big increase in elderly homelessness, and that is heartbreaking because when I have somebody who's a 75-year-old woman that we learn is living in her car, that just breaks my heart. that somebody could be in that situation. We are able to prioritize services to people who are in a population like that, somebody who has severe disabilities or somebody who's elderly. And that's a good thing, especially because COVID hasn't gone away entirely. We can prioritize the people who are elderly because obviously we don't want them to be in shelter where there's a higher risk of getting COVID and having serious complications as a result of that. So we work, again, as part of the CAN, when we prioritize people for housing opportunities, we always have the rule that we should be choosing the person who's been homeless the longest. But if we have somebody who's elderly, who's a better match for that program, we can skip that rule for a moment and prioritize somebody who's at risk.
It's a lot of great work that continues to go on by your organisation, of course, Project Hope, as it is now known. And as you said, the other organisations as well around the region. We are very fortunate to have organisations like yours around. And thank you for inviting us back and giving us an update and a moment of inspiration, because despite the fact that homelessness, as you said, is sadly still on the rise, at least there are services and there's people out there caring enough to make sure that one way or another those people are looked after. Avery Lenhart, Executive Director of Project Hope, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
And if you're in need of shelter or housing assistance or know someone who resides in the Windham area, then contact Project Hope on 860-450-1346 or visit their website at windhamnofreeze.com for details about their services.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Time now for a look at other stories making the headlines this week. The 4CS union in Connecticut, whose members include more than 4,000 higher education employees, have joined the call of no confidence in Chancellor Cheng of the Connecticut State Colleges and University System, or CSCU. During a recent special meeting, the Connecticut State Community Senate Board issued the vote of no confidence in Cheng after reports and audits by the state were released about his spending. Seth Freeman is the president of the 4CS union and explained why his members support the move.
Chancellor Cheng has failed to be a champion for CSCU students, failed to advocate and fight for CSCU students and to fight for the resources that CSCU students need, and that the faculty and staff in our community college system, certainly the faculty and staff that comprise the CT State Senate, that particular shared governance body, felt that we need a new and, frankly, a better leader at this time. So the request is to have the chancellor replaced.
Cheng released a letter to the CSCU community saying he took the concerns seriously and accepted full responsibility for the situation that had become a distraction and a source of frustration for many. Freeman said his members will be attending a public meeting of the state legislature supporting a House bill to provide future oversight of higher education management and fiscal accountability.
Our system is underfunded as it is. We need to make sure that the limited and frankly insufficient resources we do have are prioritized for our students and the services our students need and deserve. So we cannot have the frankly limited and insufficient funding that we do get from the state being mismanaged by our system or managers or anyone else for that matter. So we are in support of more accountability.
Cheng also attended the recent public hearing at the state capitol and was grilled by lawmakers about his spending. And despite Cheng promising to restore transparency and accountability, legislators expressed frustration with his management of CSCU finances and stated that an urgent need for both cultural and structural change within the overall organization was needed to rebuild public trust. The state of Connecticut has seen its first bald eagle die from the deadly H5N1 avian influenza. The death was confirmed recently by UConn after testing an eagle found in the Danielson area in the northeast part of the state. Brian Hess is a wildlife biologist with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection's Wildlife Division and monitors reduce the state's eagle population.
We have had an eagle mortality as a result of avian influenza. The effects on the population within the state, I'm not sure what impact this will have. Bird flus have been going around for a very long time. When we've been monitoring the strain for the past few years, the nesting bald eagles in the state have done quite well. I guess long term, I can't be sure, but right now we're just sort of keeping an eye on things.
Hess says the community can help them monitor bird deaths by using the state's wild bird mortality database and adding any sightings and location information there at cfwwildbirdmortalityreporting.ct.gov. Christine Cummings is the founder of A Place Called Hope, a birds of prey rehabilitation centre in Killingworth, and says these types of birds are particularly susceptible to this deadly disease.
Raptors, of course, are the predatory birds that are out there eating the debilitated animals. So they're going to pick up animals that are already suffering from whatever viruses or poisonings or already dead from those kinds of things. And when they consume them, then they, of course, can contract the virus of avian influenza, and they do not survive it.
Cummings says if you come across a dead bird, to keep your pets away from it and to triple bag it and dispose of it so no other animals or birds like eagles can feed off of it. If you come across several dead or dying birds in the same area, you can contact CT Deep's Wildlife Division on 860-424-3011 to report the situation. Connecticut Pesticide Reform, a collective of organizations, are looking to reduce or stop the use of dangerous pesticides called neonicotinoids that are killing insects and causing harm to human health. A new report from UConn Center for Environmental Sciences and Engineering called Neonicotinoids in Connecticut Waters says the pesticides are leaching into the state's waterways, threatening aquatic life and contaminating people's well water. Louise Washer is the chair of Pesticide Reform and said the chemicals commonly referred to as neonics are highly toxic.
A grain of salt-sized amount of a neonic has enough potential to kill 150,000 bees. Like 1 square foot of lawn with neonics on it can kill 1 million bees. It's just so toxic. And the water solubility means it can move easily through the soil into water, to other non-target plants, is how long it stays around. So if it's in the riverbanks or deeper in the soil, or if it's used sometimes as a trunk injection on trees, it can stay around for years.
The chemicals are routinely used on grassy areas, especially golf courses and lawns, to kill grubs that damage them. Washer says there are new studies that show that this type of usage is no longer working.
Big uses on lawns is to kill grubs that eat the roots of grass. And actually there are studies, one is co-authored by one of the scientists from the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, and that study shows that grubs have become resistant. So that's one of the uses that feels like kind of low-hanging fruit that we could get rid of, and it contributes a lot of neonics to the environment.
The Connecticut Audubon Society's annual State of the Birds report also recently highlighted the use of these chemicals and the large number of birds that die regularly after eating insects and bugs contaminated by them. Pesticide Reform are hoping to convince the legislature to introduce laws to stop the use of the chemical, as has happened in New York and Vermont. And do you use your local library and think it should be recognized for its work to the local community? If so, the Connecticut State Library System has launched its inaugural Excellence in Public Libraries Awards 2025. Nominations are open now until February 28th, and the awards are open to all public libraries within the state that have demonstrated a significant impact on their community in the last 2 years. For more details about the eligibility, timeline, and the nomination process, visit the State Library's new website at portal.ct.gov/CSL and search for Excellence in Public Library Awards. That's all from us for this edition. Do send us your questions and story ideas to the show via our website at connecticut-east.com or Facebook or Twitter at Connecticut East and on Instagram at Connecticut East This Week. And you can listen to the show again on our social platforms on demand and by asking your smart speaker to play Connecticut East This Week podcast. And please like, follow and share on your social media too. I'm Brian Scott Smith. Thank you for listening.